Hey everyone, welcome to a new video taking a look at the best champions for solo queue games in patch 9.3. I'm actually pretty ill right now. You can probably tell by my voice, so I'm sorry I don't sound as good as normal, but I'll put timestamps and a list as well. But for now, let's start with our ADCs. Even after the crit rework, I actually think Lucian is still the best AD carry you can play. He's the best early game damage wise, and I think that carries over into our mid game as well. It is definitely more even now because if you can stall to like 3 items as a Kayn or something, then you'll start to overtake Lucian, and at late game, he is definitely going to be worse in comparison to those. There's still a lot of pressure for any other AD to survive early against him though, and he should be winning the lane phase, taking dragons, towers and stuff before you can really recover and get your 3 items. The good part is as well, he does start to build crit, so he can still benefit from the buffs anyway, but since he's building it a bit later into the game, it's not really a straight up buff like it is for the actual crit champs who rush it as the first 2. The one I think you really should watch out for this patch is going to be Jinx. She's probably the most underrated crit champion in the game at the moment, seriously strong with her new Infinity Edge and her rockets. She already had really good buffs to move her own damage to mid game with her Q or attack speed, and then the zap buff as well to make that scale with attack speed so it's a lot faster, and now crit items to power up her mid game as well. So around like 2 to 3 items, it's really hard to stop her. This is a really good example of the other way that you can build her as well. Instead of rushing the Infinity Edge, you get the AD item first like a BF sword, and then you go into your Zeal and your Runers. Especially with lethal tempo, this works really well with the attack speed, and this is actually a master tier Korean player, so I'll link his Mobalytics down below to let you have a look at his exact page and build order. My first runner up is Vayne. She's an absolute monster with the new Phantom Dancer. A less damage but more defensive version of the item is kind of perfect for her. Blade and Rage Blade is enough damage for Vayne to kill everybody, and now you have a shield and improved kiting with your PD plus the added crit and attack speed, so it is still increasing your damage even more. It's kind of hard to say that she's the best when you can beat her really hard in the lane phase, but it's hard to put her any lower down than this when she is a monster at just like 2 or 3 items. You get to that point, you can definitely carry. Last runner up is going to be Sivir, and the new Essence Reaver is a really good item on her. It's perfect, and now we can have triple crit items, but with 2 of those giving us AD. Sivir loves cooldown reduction and AD, so she can use her spells more, but also more AD to make her crits do more damage. Now we can grab the Essence Reaver 3rd, and we have bigger crits. We grab our Bloodthirster 4th for even bigger crits, so it's kind of a perfect setup. You don't have to get double attack speed items anymore, and it makes her way more deadly. One thing very quickly just to mention, what about Ezreal, right? He's still one of the best in my opinion, but at least for solo queue, the crit champions are easier to play and a little bit more reliable, but he's still definitely top tier if you're good with them. So let's move into our mid laners, and the best one in my opinion is going to be Yasuo. He's probably one of the strongest champions in the entire game at the moment, and he loves the new crit items. The thing is, it makes him spike earlier into the game, which is amazing for him. The new Phantom Dancer is a big part of that. It makes him harder to kill, but it allows him to go for full damage earlier. His win rate is extremely good, even when people go Phantom Dancer, Infinity Edge into Sterix. And I mean that because Phantom Dancer and Sterix share the same passive, so only one of those shields is going to proc. He's basically not building properly, and he's still winning a lot of games. But when he buys something like a Bloodthirster or a GA instead of that Sterix, he wins even more. A ridiculous amount actually. I'll actually link to a Yasuo down below that has a different interesting build, grabbing Shiv and things like Death Dance instead to do a stupid amount of damage and be hard to kill at the same time. So Fizz is my one to keep an eye on this patch, since a meta of very easy to kill AD carries and supports is kind of exactly what he wants to thrive in. The added part is that he has a good win rate versus Yasuo and even stuff like Zoe as well, who are really popular in solo queue at the moment. Fizz can definitely snowball out of control if he gets hit early, which is amazing, but he is also one of the few assassins who doesn't completely hard fall off late game either. Like once you have your death cap, you stand a chance to kill anybody anyway. First runner up is going to be Zoe, who I think is an absolute machine at the moment. She's got that potential to 1v9 a game, finding sleeps and then one-shotting them afterwards. I think it's the fact that she can do so much herself that makes her one of the most popular picks in Korea as well. You don't have to rely on anybody else on your team, you just need yourself. AD carries right now especially are so focused on getting that triple crit build to that point really in the game that they can't really stop easily to get a QSS, or they don't want to, and that means you've got a few easy targets just waiting to get comboed down. My other runner-up is going to be Leblanc, and she is still one of the champions I personally am most afraid of as an AD carry. The new PD is quite nice, but it doesn't really save you since it has no magic resist on it. It's ever since we had that Reaver, when she's able to one-shot almost anybody with a lead or from just like one item with your Ludens and your Sorks, so nowhere is going to be safe on the map if you play it properly, and she can like duck over walls, bypass wards, and roam like a god. Those roams are really good to influence other lanes or the jungle in the meta right now, but I think there are just way more targets for her to nuke down at the moment, and that is why she's so good. We're going to move into the jungle, and there was a bit of a shakeup. We're still kind of settling down from those experience changes, but Kha'zix is still overall the strongest pickup if you want to carry as a jungler and not rely on anybody else. Stat-wise, you're supposed to lose early and then hard carry at like 3 items. That is how they've wired Kha'zix to work. But if you can get a few early kills, you kind of skip that weak phase. I think as well, W upgrade is seriously underrated at the moment. The slow is amazing. You can help catch people, stop them engaging, or start a fight yourself. You don't have to be just a one-dimensional killer. The build that we showed is really ham, but there there is actually another way to play it. There is this Korean guy who runs more of like health build, like Cleaver and Sterix as well. It still brings really good damage, but it's a lot less punishing to play, so it might be something to try out. The one I think that is actually pretty overpowered, honestly, but nobody really plays him is Nunu. I think it's going to pop up in solo queue a lot more. He's had a steady high win rate for a few patches, and now it's kind of ridiculous. He can struggle being invaded early, but once you have your Cinder Hulk, a red smite as well to reduce everybody's damage, you become almost impossible to kill. Even with the new AD carry items buffing them up earlier into the game, you heal for so much with your consume, and you have so many ways to slow or root people, you just seriously don't die. I actually like to think of it kind of like a Hecarim. That's how he ganks. He just runs around the map with his snowball. He farms just fine as well. He can engage fights properly. He can frontline. He can last forever, as we talked about. It honestly takes till late game before you can really burst him down. The first runner-up I want to mention is Jarvan, who I think kind of replaced Camille. Like, we had the nerfs that came into her, right, where she can't stun minions anymore, and Jarvan is now that early game monster. You have amazing ganks, but you have really good damage early, and you're great at camping just one lane like Camille is, blowing the flash and then abusing them over and over. You have way more builds to choose from to suit you now as well, which I think is really valuable when you're playing him every single game. You can go full damage to carry yourself, you can go health and AD for like a bit in the middle, and you can even go tank as well. The other runner-up I think is Kayn at the moment. He's one of the better scaling options really for junglers. I say scaling because once you get the transformation, you start to be a massive issue, and before that, it's not that bad. Red Kayn seems to do better at the moment as well in this meta. You can glue to AD carries and make their life really annoying. You can frontline, you have all that healing and damage as well. He can be a bit hit and miss, since before he's transformed, as we said, he doesn't really do very much, right? But with AD carries and a few key nerfs as well, there don't have to be as many early fights now, and you can just scale. I have to kind of mention Karthus as well. I do think he's still bonkers. Just a quick mention, if you want to abuse it, then go ahead. It is ridiculously overpowered right now. He power farms harder than any others, and he has a stupid amount of damage. So moving into support, and I hope one day I don't have to say Thresh is the best support, but for now he is the highest impact support, able to change the game and the lane outcome pretty much by himself. Ignite nerfs might have actually been a buff for Thresh as well. I think it's kind of weird, but he already has enough damage, and now it's a lower cooldown. In my eyes, it basically means that you can look for kills more often with Ignite now. Even though it might not make them as guaranteed when you go for it, it does definitely help. The really good thing with Thresh that separates him from a lot of others is, yes, his lane phase is really good, but he's still able to play defensive afterwards. You can protect your team. You're great at feeding your AD carry in lane and swapping to defend them afterwards. The one I think you should watch out for this patch that will probably get more popular is going to be Blitzcrank. There is no real swap to defense for this guy. It's all about keeping up the pressure until you win or you lose. He's my one to watch because in theory, there's just way more targets that you want to hook being picked now in the meta. A lot of poke champions like Zyra have been nerfed, which were kind of the biggest counter to Blitz, get him low before he does anything, and the more popular supports are mostly these defensive mages who are really good hook targets. I also think being able to feed a few kills to your AD carry is a bit more meaningful now as well, that we have like the crit item changes. Getting them there early in Infinity Edge does actually make a much bigger difference than before. My first runner-up is going to be Nami, who is kind of similar to Thresh, I think, just a mage version. It does a good job of allowing an AD carry to farm in lane with the heals, or maybe even getting them a few kills. Afterwards, though, she can grab her sensor and then start to protect them and boost her damage throughout the entire game. With Zyra and Brand being moved down a little bit because of the nerfs, I think Nami's damage looks better in comparison, if that makes sense, and that is why she's suddenly a lot better. The other runner-up, I think, is Soraka, who is the most irritating support to play against. Pair up with an Ezreal, by the way, and the healing and the poke is just something you'd wish you dodged in champion select. She is really good with AD carries, especially because of the sensor, the redemption, and the protection that she's going to bring in team fights, keeping them alive when they get stronger throughout the game. As weird as it sounds, after these enchanter item buffs, a lot of these now follow the same pattern as AD carries. They're kind of like okay early in the lane phase, but they start to get much stronger the more full their inventory becomes. There's actually a guy who plays Klepto Soraka or Guardian as well. Both are not the normal builds, but they are working in Korean Masters. So they must have something behind them, right? I'll throw a link down below if you want to look and try that out. So moving into our top lane then, and actually just to point out, I don't know if there's a clear best top laner anymore after the changes, but Darius is definitely good for solo queue, so we're going to stick him as the best. In pro play, you definitely have Urgot as like the best, and San as well, but in solo queue, they don't ever tend to do as well, so it doesn't really make as much sense. Darius, though, is still the king of the lane phase. He had buffs a while ago that made that part even stronger, especially when you're rushing a Trinity Force. He's a very all-or-nothing champion, but you have your tower plates, you have your dragons, your rift-herald, and all of that stuff in this season means if you can get a lead and take things with it, it's just much better. The one I think you should watch out for, though, is definitely going to be Yorick. I'm pretty sure he will become a lot more popular as people realize just how strong and annoying he can actually be. He shreds through towers even more with his ultimate, right? But he can now leash that thing around the map and bring it to actual fights. That addition, the buffs a few patches ago, saw him shoot up in win rate, and especially with tower plates, it's a very scary thing to play against. This is a master tier Yorick, by the way, now, who's definitely abused the buffs to climb, but he has a ton of different builds and runes that he goes for. I'd recommend looking at his Mobalytics profile, which I'll link down below if you're serious about playing him, because there are so many different items you can run, and they all seem pretty good. I would still place Riven as a top tier pick now, so she's going to be our first runner-up, especially if you stop building Black Cleaver first. She is another champion that has a million different build paths, but Spear of Sojin into Cleaver and Death Dance seems to be a corker of a build. In theory, this item is even better than it was before. You don't waste gold on the mana from Essence Reaver like it was before this patch, but it still gives you everything you would want from that item. The other runner-up that I want to mention is Nasus. He is definitely top tier at lower ranks especially, but he has a good win rate as long as he can finish his first item. That sounds kind of weird because obviously you're going to get one item in the game, but sometimes you're actually going to get so crushed that you're just able to do nothing and you get it a bit too late. Not only do you have good damage, good split push as Nasus as well, but your Wither is honestly an AD carry's worst nightmare, especially crit AD carries who need to auto attack. The one I want to mention that you also should keep your eye on is Irelia. I would watch her a lot. Like, her nerf stars patch turned out to actually be buffs, and I think by the end of the week people will realize that and we'll see a lot more of her, and she'll actually be better than before. So that is going to wrap up the best champions in patch 9.3. I'm sorry about my voice. I'm doing the best I can for now, but thank you for watching until the end. Remember to like the video if you enjoyed, but for now I'll leave you with the robots.